Sisters, working class heroes, this is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. COVID cases up 34% last week. Yay. New records, wonderful. Super spreader events doing exactly what they were supposed to do. Make sure that we peak right at the right time, which is the next couple of months as the transition happens. Mission accomplished, because I got to tell you, it's the only thing that I can think of that would make the last couple of months make any sense. That Trump, kind of reading the tea leaves, knew he wasn't going to win, was hoping he might be able to steal it. Not happening. So leave as big a mess as you can behind you. So there you go. Up, up, up. Now, what today was good for me, Joe Biden released his COVID-19 task force. And there were actually doctors on it. I know. Cannot possibly believe that you would seek out the advice of medical professionals who might actually know what they're doing. No, I'd much rather have Jared Kushner deciding what we're going to do. But and I guess this is the swinging back to somewhat back to normalcy, where we're actually going to maybe start thinking about, maybe we should ask the smart people, the people who spend their lives on dealing with this stuff, how do you stop it? Because we're coming into a very interesting time where bigger, more. Now, the good news today that came out, Pfizer has said that they have a vaccine they believe is 90% effective. Obviously, the rollout's going to be very difficult. They wanted to release the breaking news prior to the election. I don't know that I buy that. I don't know which side of that I'm on, because I gotta imagine that Trump would have been better for them, because he would have said, "Here, take all the money." I'm not really sure, but Mike Pence did come out and say that it was all because of the public-private partnership between Donald Trump and Pfizer that this vaccine happened. Now, the person who's the head of Pfizer's development said that they were never part of the Operation Warp Speed that Pence put together, and you would think Pence would know that as the head of it. But she said they've never taken a dime from the federal government on this or anyone else. It is theirs, and which made me go, yeah, they don't want to take money from anyone else because they can then gouge your eyes out. But that's a whole nother argument for a whole nother day. We're talking about Mike Pence, who is now the leader of the 2024 presidential election, by taking the mantle and saying, look what I've done. I single-handedly, with my public-private partnership pen. Yeah, a lot of P's right there. I single-handedly solved this, and that's going to be his 2024 pitch. So there you go. Now on the election side, Billy Barr, not giving up. Evidently, Billy Barr has authorized the Department of Justice to probe substantial allegations. I don't know that they're substantial. I think a lot of them are internet hoaxes. But look, I'm all in favor of investigating any irregularities. If someone did do something wrong, we have a process for them. You arrest them, you try them, you put them in a box. We have the playbook, just like we had the coronavirus playbook on how you deal with pandemics. You can't thwart the book. So there you go. But here's the sad thing. We're really this really bizarre divided nation, because I guess I'm someone who could go, yeah, I want every vote counted. And I want to make sure that every irregularity or every claim of fraudulent behavior is investigated so that we don't have these things. But I also know that in this moment in history, this is the most secure our elections have ever been. As much as we like to pine for the old days were rife with abuse. I'm a big fan of hand-marked paper ballots. There's a problem with that, of people having a whole bunch of pre-marked, hand-marked paper ballots and stuffing them in the boxes. They're walking them to wherever they're being counted. Stuff's happened since the beginning of time. But we're in this weird moment where nobody believes anybody else. And Ron Johnson, who I generally disagree with politically, the senator from Wisconsin, came out and said, look, it's unfortunate. No matter who wins, the election, the other half of the country isn't going to view them as the legitimate president. And that's really, really a scary moment. I think we're finally there, where half the country has one guy, or half the country has the other, and never two shall meet. And yesterday, I took my kids to the picket line that I've been spending some time on. And on the way back, we were listening to the radio, and for some weird reason, my son loves the 80s music. So the song by The Call, When the Walls Came Down, came on the radio. And there's, there are a couple of lines that immediately popped back into my head, because it's been a while since I've heard the song. And, one say, we've got terrorist thinking playing on fears. And you go, it's exactly what we're seeing today. Now, remember, this song that they're singing about in the 1980s is the fall of the Berlin Wall, all of the fall of communism, all of the things at the time where, each side had their massive disinformation campaigns, and never the two were ever going to come together. So the fact that the Berlin Wall came down was an enormous, enormous moment in history. And I remember watching it going, this could be a great thing. This could be the coming together of the world. And it was for, about 10 seconds. But that wall that divided people, I mean, we still have this virtual wall. Like I said, they were singing about, the Berlin Wall, and we have to tear down this virtual wall of disinformation, because it's keeping us stupid. And my favorite line of the song ever is, I don't think there are any Russians, and there are no Yanks, just corporate criminals playing with tanks. And you go, yeah, the very wealthy in this country, the extraordinarily powerful, they're the ones just moving things around the chessboard, and we're reacting to it. And when I look at what's going on, much like you saw when the Berlin Wall fell, you had the ideologies on both sides. At some point, the people have to tear those down at some point. And this is what I've been doing since Election Day. This idea, and I've been talking about this for a couple of years, because I just fear we're on the wrong paths, totally away from each other. Because if we're not able to talk to each other, if we're not able to find some bit of common ground, we're screwed. And Jay Gould will have been proven absolutely right. And he wouldn't even have to hire us. The famous Jay Gould quote is, I could easily hire half the working class to murder the other half. He would be thrilled, because he doesn't have to pay either one of us to kill each other. And who would have thought of that? Now, I'm getting a whole bunch of people saying, well, the Democrats cheated. If they did, again, they didn't cheat very well, because the Democrats lost House seats. Mitch McConnell is still the leader of the Senate. Lindsey Graham is still in the Senate. Susan freaking Collins is still in the U.S. Senate. If that's cheating, and we call us a couple of governors' mansions too. If that's cheating, wow. Did it really poorly, but yet you've got people like David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler down in Georgia saying, oh, that Secretary of State, he didn't do his job. He should resign. Let those people vote. How dare you? And the Secretary of State said he's not resigning. That ain't going to happen. He said, the voters of Georgia hired me, and the voters will be the ones to fire me. Hoping for that. But the reality is as I said a couple minutes ago, we're at the most secure electoral process that we've ever seen in this country. Could it be better? Oh, yeah, absolutely, without question. But like the Republican Lieutenant Governor of Georgia said, there isn't any credible examples of voter fraud or disenfranchisement in his state or really in any state. So it then comes back to this blind faith belief that, oh, their ballots, they were burned and they were shredded. I saw it on YouTube. Facebook had a video. And the thing is what's amazing to me is you have these people who are 100% certain. Like the guy on election day that he swore he had 8 or 10 ballots. They turned out just to be applications for ballots. But he was 100% certain those were ballots and he could have cast them. This information, this virtual wall of disinformation is horribly dangerous because it's keeping us stupid. Like somebody, I actually had someone say to me that, well, you remember back in 2000 when, the Washington Times, printed that newspaper with President Al Gore on the cover. I'm going, no, I don't remember that because it didn't happen. I do remember when Truman held the one up that said Dewey won, but I don't remember the Gore one because it doesn't exist. In fact, if you really wanted to make the argument, it's the other way. Bush, who didn't secure the majority of votes, if you counted them all, was actually named the winner that night. So it's just crazy. And nowhere in this country do you find crazy more than where in the industry that I'm employed by, the trucking industry. Literally no place on the planet is more insane than that industry. It is the utopian paradise for conservative supply side voodoo, laissez-faire Reaganomics. It is the petri dish of cutthroat capitalism. It is, hooray, buddy, you're on your own, but you're your own boss. They are now talking about a big trucker strike going to happen on Wednesday. We're going to shut the country down. Like France does when France wants better wages, hours, and conditions. When the French drivers feel that they're being they're being abused and they're not being paid enough or respected, or there's a threat to their health care or their pensions, they turn the truck sideways on the road and don't move until they get what they want. But here in the U.S., we have a law that says no trucks in the third lane, so traffic can get right around because we put up with that. Because, well, we're individuals. And in fact, what's happened over the years since deregulation, thanks to Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan, we now not only have just a couple thousand trucking companies, we have a couple million trucking companies. Joe bought a truck. It's Joe's Trucking. And Joe's out there trying to slit the throat of the big boys and the guy next to him. Because, hey, got to keep fuel in the truck, got to keep the wheels moving, got to keep the kids fed, got to pay all the bills. So are they striking for any of that? Is that the talk? We're going to go on strike, which I'd be on board with. They got these really cute little signs on their trailers. You've seen them? No cheap freight. Yet when they need a backhaul, they'll take anything. I'll do it for fuel. Because we've created the conservative utopia in the trucking industry, which is what they want to do to the rest of the economy. This is what the gig economy is. Truckers have been the gig economy for decades now. You can't tell a trucker about the gig economy because they're all the living gig economy. And as I said, if they were saying, hey, tolls are too high, insurance pools are too difficult to get involved in, the prices are too high, we need better fuel, all kinds of stuff. We need better accommodations on the roads. We need more rest areas. We need more places to pull off. We need to stop these damn malls from putting these idiotic islands in the middle so we can't turn around. Tons of stuff. If that was it, I'd be going, yeah, I'm with you. I'm 100% with you. Let's do it. I'll even turn my car in solidarity. That's not what it is. It's because someone told them, some Q kook said, hey, I saw a video and they're burning ballots. They're not actually ballots. They're sample ballots, but facts don't matter. So 15,000 strong are going to go on strike. 15,000. And you go, wow, 15,000's a lot. In the $700 billion industry that is the trucking industry, 15,000 trucks being off the road for a day is kind of like just getting your tires filled. It's nothing at all. And we've got almost 4 million trucks on the road at any given time. The trucking industry moves close to, I think in 2017 it was close to 11 billion pounds of freight. So 15,000, if they can get that. Now, they never get that. They get a couple of hundred of kooks who go out there and go, I'll show you. But they're not going to get anywhere near that. And the sad thing is they're doing it because of Donald Trump. They're doing it because they're siding with a billionaire over sanity. And the disinformation wall that is strong with truck drivers. Because you always got the ratchet jaws on the CB, spreading their nonsense. And then, of course, let's not forget, you got the whole subculture and the whole all the Q stuff, because they got a lot of time sitting in those truck stops while their family is back home in their houses. They're sitting in those lots. Got nothing better to do, so might as well read kookery. Instead of saying, how do we make this industry livable? No. Oh, and by the way, how do we make the industry profitable? Because the average median income in 2018 for the average worker who goes home and sleeps in his own bed every night was about $46,800. For the average truck driver, $43,680. So not only are they not home, they're making less money. And in fact, I remember a guy who told me he was home 5 days an entire year. And at the end of paying all of his tolls, his taxes, his fuel, his food, his lodging, everything, he brought home $16,000. And these are the people who are going to strike for Donald Trump. These are the people who are going to shut it down for the Donald. But they won't shut it down to support their own families or to be home to keep their side of the bed warm. You want to talk about the definition of insanity? These idiot truckers who are going, oh, Billy Big Rigger, and I'm going to shut it down for Trump. Jeez, oh man. There literally is no hope when that's the frame. Literally no hope. And I'm somebody who right now is saying we need to be reaching out. Not here. Not wasting my time there. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
Nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1909. That was the day members of the industrial workers of the world began a free speech fight in Spokane, Washington. Wobblies often intersected seasonal workers through street corner soapboxing. Many towns and cities worked to resist IWW organizing efforts by passing ordinances against such rallies. Wobblies challenged these repressive tactics. They would descend on a town or city in great numbers, forcing mass arrests that overwhelmed local authorities and judicial systems. At Spokane, the organizing campaign began a year earlier. Wobblies mobilized against local employment agencies that charged workers fees for jobs that didn't exist. The campaign was so popular that the IWW was able to establish a union hall, hold meetings and lectures, and establish a newspaper. The Spokane City Council quickly passed an ordinance against street corner rallies. When Wobblies learned that religious groups were exempt from the restrictive ordinance, they announced November 2nd as Free Speech Day in Spokane. They put out the call, wanted men to fill the jails of Spokane. By the end of the month, as many as 500 had been arrested. The War Department even offered up nearby Fort Wright to handle the glut of prisoners. A young Elizabeth Gurley Flynn arrived in Spokane to soapbox. Efforts to arrest her were briefly frustrated after she chained herself to a nearby lamppost. Flynn made good use of her time in jail. She reported on appalling prison conditions and accused the local sheriff of operating a brothel out of the women's prison section. The free speech fight gained nationwide attention and enjoyed wide public support. By March, all prisoners were released, the ordinance had been rescinded, and employment agencies' license revoked. The IWW won big.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said, look, if these truckers are going to go on strike for better wages, hours, conditions, I'm right there with them. Because they saw some quackery on YouTube that they bought into, misguided at best. And look, one of the things that I've been saying the last several days is we got to find a way to bridge the urban-rural divide because, truth be told, many of these truck drivers are from urban areas. In fact, I've told the story a number of times of one guy I knew from Alabama who was angry about those Southerners who were taking his job, those Mexicans. And I said, yeah, I know how it is when a Southerner takes your job. And didn't quite get it. But here to share some thoughts on how do we bridge that divide? How do we begin to have the conversation to open that up? Well, a guy who's driven through the heart of our divided nation, Daniel Alot, has written the book On the Road in Trump's America, a journey into the heart of a divided nation. You can get that on Amazon, and we'll make sure we get links out. Daniel, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So, I'm looking at, did you hear there's a big trucker strike coming? Truckers are angry that Trump is being, I think the argument is that there were votes that weren't, maybe some illegals, maybe some, I don't know, but they're angry and they're striking for Trump.
Really? I did not hear that.
Yeah, it's not a big thing. Going to be about 15,000 trucks, they claim, which is an enormous number, probably about 500.
Yeah.
But the thing is you've got this kind of fervor out there that half the country thinks that they're being robbed. I mean, I'm already seeing stop the steal signs all over the road. How are we going to come back to the middle of that road?
Well, there's so much distrust in, the core institutions in this country, in the media, in the political parties, and in the whole system, that it's going to take longer than anything we can do in the short run. And you're right. I've heard from a lot of people that I met on the road, from Iowa and Michigan and Wisconsin, who are Trump supporters, and they're very upset. They do believe that the election has been stolen, and they don't know what to do about it. But as long as I think Trump being, he's gonna see this out, and he's seen as the fighter, and I think people appreciate this. This may be actually a brilliant political move for Trump, that he's fighting this, because he's always branded himself as the fighter,
right,
for his cause and for his supporters. And so here he is once again. He's fighting against the establishment.
No, I agree with you, because Democrats have always been seen as the ones who are going to surrender. In fact, Dick Cheney, when Bush was in the White House, said the Democrats will cave. It's what they do. We saw it with Gore. We saw it with Hillary. We saw it with Kerry. I mean, they said, okay, I rule of law. We sanctity of the ballot box, and they stepped aside instead of putting up that fight. You're right.
Yeah, and conservatives, as you kind of alluded to, always complained about past standard bearers not really fighting for them, and Trump has. And even on, I compare it to what he did with the wall funding, which he wasn't able to really get. But he shut down the government, if you remember, a couple of years ago for over a month, a record amount of time. And that, I think, was to convey to his base and his supporters that, hey, this funding isn't going to come through, but I fought for it. It's not my fault. I shut down the government over this, so don't blame me. And I think that worked. Nobody did blame him. His supporters blamed the Democrats, the other Republicans, the media, but not him. And this may be something similar, where he's setting himself up to do something later on. Who knows what that might be? It could be running again. Who knows?
Yeah, he'll be a much older guy when that happens. But who knows? Who knows where this takes you? But I'm looking at this, and Ron Johnson had a quote that I used earlier, that no matter who wins at this point, we're in this situation. And look, I'm not a fan of Ron Johnson, but he's right here. No matter who wins, the half of the country is not going to be happy with, and not going to view as legitimate going forward. I'm in one of these places where I'm willing to say, hey, how do we extend the hand and tear down this virtual disinformation wall? Because look, there's so much out there that isn't anywhere remotely close to truth, but people believe it wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I look at our industry and the media, and there needs to be that we need to repair the trust that has been frayed with the public. And talking to a lot of people on both the right and the left, they just don't trust what they're that what they're getting is the truth from the media. They don't trust the media to be neutral arbiters of what is newsworthy, of what is the truth. And so to do that, I mean, there are a lot of things that can be done, but I think one thing is these news organizations need to have a diversity of opinions in terms of ideology in their newsroom. And so a lot of media outlets are either conservative or, liberal, and they, claim to speak for the entire country. Let's say if you're at Politico or New York Times or something. But if you don't have anyone in the newsroom and among the editors and the reporters who's, maybe a Trump supporter or maybe, has come from and lived in rural America, then how can you claim to speak for the entire country?
No.
How can you claim to be reporting and representing the priorities and values for the whole country? So I think some diversity in the newsrooms could help.
That's an excellent idea. I've taken this idea that I now don't care who you voted for in the last election. My mindset is I don't care who you voted. We got to stop this. You voted for this person, and I can't help you or be around you or any of that. This cancel idea has got to stop.
Mm-hmm.
So the morning after the election, the union that I'm involved in, there was a strike in in the local. I went down to that picket line and I helped those people, with, set up their picket line and talk about how they're gonna win the strike that they're on, knowing that 3/4 of the people who are on strike at that company are Trump supporters. And not beat them up for it, but say, look, I'm
Sure.
here to help you because you're fighting the right fight. We've got to find some common ground again. And I'm hoping, for me, that's where the fight is. If you want to make America great or you want to build back better, maybe that's the place where we can do it.
Yeah, and we heard Joe Biden in his speech on Saturday night basically say that he's going to be the president for both those who voted for him and those who didn't vote for him. And we'll see how long that lasts, or at least even how long those who didn't vote for him think that it lasts. But if there can be some middle ground and common ground in getting things that both sides agree with, like a relief package on the coronavirus or infrastructure reform, things like that aren't as hot button issues as some of the other things that we consider, then maybe that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I think those two things have to come first, and they have to be visible, and they have to make people's lives better. At the end of the day, it's about making people's lives better. Because here's the reality: as I'm sitting on this picket line talking to these workers who, for years, have seen stagnant wages, have seen their health insurance costs go up and up and up, and now this time the company wants to saddle them with a maintenance fee on their 401ks, which is going to make their any retirement security even that less down the road. They're on the same treadmill that everybody else is. They're struggling like everyone else, and for me, that's the fight. That's always been the fight. How do you make people's lives better? And I hope Biden is able to do some of those things to maybe bridge that divide by saying, look, we're going to make sure that everybody does a little bit better.
Yeah, but the thing that you did though is I think most important, which is you talk to people and you listen. People who don't agree with you, they obviously you agree on some things, and out of solidarity you're there. And that they probably know who you are and that you differ in a lot of your opinions from theirs, but you're engaging. And that's what I found, on my 3 years on the road, just how many people were disengaging with their coworkers, their neighbors, their family members who they disagreed with on politics. And they weren't talking through these issues and trying to find the common ground. So it's not just the politicians, it's just not the media doing a better job, but it's also on an individual basis. And it was interesting and sad how many people were falling out with their friends, neighbors, and people even moving away from areas of, a county or something that voted one way or the other, and they no longer felt comfortable living among people who voted a different way. And so they ended up moving away to a place where they felt more comfortable politically. And that's really not what we should be doing. We should be comfortable having people in our family, our neighbors who think differently on politics, and still loving them and being friends with them and respecting them.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've done here recently, because it's something that I've been thinking about doing for a while. I've moved to a part of our program where we're doing on what is a major right-leaning platform called ThinkSpot. We're now engaging with those folks there, and what I found to this point is they want to know about labor issues. They want to know, they want to ask the crazy working class liberal, this, that, or the other thing. And so far, and it's only been a couple of weeks, we've had good engagement. We've had, honest discussion, and very little of the "oh, you're a moron, shut up," which I think is a good thing, because I think both sides of the aisle want to get away from where we are right now and get things done. Because my view on it, while we're fighting each other, while we're mired in this polar opposite kind of thinking, we're not getting anything done.
Yeah, I found that too. As tribal and polarized as we are, and people felt forced almost to take sides, and they didn't want to. They were exhausted. That was the word I heard over and over again. People are exhausted with politics, but yet they didn't want to, be so polarized and be angry all the time and be triggered all the time by things the other side was saying. So I think there is a nascent desire to reach out, to find some common ground. I guess it might help having a different president in office. We can be hopeful at this point. And having a divided Congress would probably help too.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean we're going to get anything done. That's the scary part as well. But here's the question I have for you, because you did this. You were on the ground. You went into these places, and maybe you agreed with these people, maybe you didn't. It's that first step. I got to imagine that was the hardest for you in approaching these conversations, because it's always that guard is up first, that that you're being attacked, and people shut down when they feel they're being attacked. Any advice on how you went about it, or how people should go about bridging these differences?
I think people go into any political conversation often with a desire to win an argument, but I found, part of it was just being a reporter, but getting people to open up by just listening, conveying to them that I really did care to learn about their lives, priorities, their values, without judgment. And as a reporter, I never cut anyone off. I would spend 2 or 3 hours with a lot of the people I interviewed. But what really helped to lower people's guards and build up a degree of trust and goodwill is just by spending a lot of time with people, 1, 2, 3, 4 times over the years. And so building up relationships that sometimes it took, to the third interview, fourth interview for people to really open up and tell me what they really thought. In fact, I think of a couple I met in Erie who, they were always saying at the tool shop where they worked that they had a coworker who was a Trump supporter who was thinking about, it seemed like he was thinking about abandoning Trump and going to Biden. And I always was like, okay, can you help me get an interview with this guy, because there's so few people that I met that actually changed sides. And it took until the third interview to build up that trust for this man I was interviewing to introduce me to his coworker. And he spent 10 minutes on the phone with his friend, convincing him that I could be trusted as a member of the media. And, and that told me that, okay, if I spend the time to, sort of build up these relationships, that really helps. And if I was reporting the whole time, so people see, okay, this guy's playing it fair right down the middle, then that helps. But I think also on an individual basis, don't always try to win the argument. And that's something that people often do on social media. Try to have the conversations in person.
Yep.
And just listen with a true desire to understand where people are coming from. And I think if you have, a family relationship or a friendship where you have that mutual respect and love or admiration to begin with, that really helps to begin. And then don't always try to win. Just go in trying to learn, and that can work wonders.
No, that's the most important piece of advice right there. In fact, what I've found to be beneficial is go, what, this isn't a winning. I've already lost. You won this argument. Tell me how I lost.
Yeah.
And
it takes humility.
Yeah, and that usually gets a laugh, and that kind of helps.
Well, plus you have a talk show, so you're used to talking. So maybe people are surprised, because I'm sure you have very well-formed opinions yourself, and people are used to hearing your opinions. And then maybe they're sort of taken aback with the fact that you're willing to listen, you want to learn. But I think once you do that, this is what I found. once you convey to people that you do want to learn, the floodgates open, and you can get to such a deep level of understanding and learn things about people. And that's one thing I was always struck by. We all have our preconceived ideas. You know, you meet somebody and you think, okay, I'm in Erie. I'm talking to a refugee from Iraq, a young woman. Okay, we're talking about Trump. She's probably not going to be a big fan, right? Oh, it turns out she likes Trump quite a bit. I was surprised. I'm talking to a farmer, a white farmer in Iowa. Probably has good things to say about Trump. No, doesn't like Trump at all. So I always was surprised about where people came down on different issues, including on Trump. And so I tried to keep my own.
I say this all the time. I've been pretty fortunate. I grew up in an inner city housing project. I now live in a fairly rural area, so I kind of know I can live in both places. And there's so many myths about each, and I think if I don't know how there's a way to break those down to where one side understands what the other goes through, and there's maybe some common understanding. I don't know how you do that.
Well, I think to the extent that it's possible, just spending more time in the other place. You're right. The rural and the urban divide is stark, and I was reminded of that traveling. Just sort of, it's not just about political differences, which we saw, grow even deeper in this election, with the rural areas becoming more Republican and urban more Democratic, but also just in everything from the way people dress, the music they listen to, the food they eat, their values, what they do in their free time. It's completely different. But I think just spending more time in the other place. If you're living in the city, why not spend a couple of weeks when it's possible, or even just a few days if you have family in a rural area, like really try and take it in, and vice versa. I heard a lot of people in rural areas, they'd maybe go to New York for a day in their lives, that's it. And otherwise they had no interest in going to the city. And I think you can learn a lot by doing that.
Good advice. All good advice. All good things to take to heart and to mind. And also, probably the best advice I have: read Daniel's book, "On the Road in Trump's America: A Journey into the Heart of a Divided Nation," written by Daniel L. Lott. We'll make sure we get links out on how you can get a hold of that. Daniel, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot. Enjoy.
Already, again, like I said, you can pick up the book Amazon, which I hate, but they seem to have a lot of this, and we'll get links out. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1952. That was the day that the labor movement lost Philip Murray. Philip was born in Scotland in 1886 to an Irish Catholic family. His father was a coal miner and a union leader. Philip followed his father into the mines at just the age of 10 years old. The father and son made the trip to the Pennsylvania coal fields together when Philip was just 16. They saved enough money and then sent for the rest of their family. One day, Philip got into an altercation with one of his bosses. Not only was he fired, his entire family was kicked out of their company home. From that point on, Philip was dedicated to the union cause as the only hope for working people. He quickly rose through the ranks of the United Mine Workers, becoming vice president by the time he was 33. He worked closely with United Mine Workers president John L. Lewis. During the 1930s, there became a nationwide drive to organize industrial workers. Philip was appointed to lead the Steelworkers Organizing Committee, a key sector for the industrial effort. The Steelworker Campaign met with historic success. They reached a collective bargaining agreement with U.S. Steel, the giant of the industry. Philip went on to become the first president of the United Steelworkers of America, as well as president of the Congress of Industrial Organizations. Under his leadership, industrial labor became a powerful force. But that force was checked by the passage of the Anti-Union Taft-Hartley Act in 1947. The anti-communist hysteria of the Red Scare also took its toll on the CIO, forcing Philip to expel some of the most radical unions from the organization. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the center of the world now is going to be Georgia, as well. The fate of the nation is what happens in these runoff elections. Do Democrats win both seats and have control of the Senate because of the vice president, or do we get a split, or do the Republicans keep both and we have divided government where very little is going to get done? Maybe the thought is we can learn some things that have happened up in Maine, which is why I've asked Tiffany Bond to come talk with us. Tiffany was a senatorial candidate up there this time around. Sadly, Susan Collins was reelected. But Tiffany, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start with Maine. A lot of people heartbroken. Susan Collins pulled this out. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think it was almost entirely predictable. So I know a lot of polling showed different, and I know there was a lot of optimism around the race, but I was sounding the alarm. I was actually sounding the alarm back in 2018 when I ran for the US House, where I was saying, hey, we are going to hit a point very soon, this race, if not the next one, where money and spending is going to have an inverse relationship to success. And they were like, no, that's not going to happen. It happened. It happened in Maine this year.
Yeah, well, there's the thought that, and I think Bloomberg has been an example of that. The more money you spend, the less return the diminished return you get. That seems to be been conventional wisdom for a while, only we just don't follow it.
Well, I mean, and it's not even new. So before I'm an attorney now, but before I became an attorney, I worked in marketing, and I would watch companies do like a $10,000 donation and then spend several $100,000 promoting the $10,000 donation. They probably would have gotten a lot better bang for their buck in marketing if they just donated all the money.
Yeah.
But they didn't, and that was something that it was increasingly uncomfortable for me in marketing, and it's really uncomfortable in politics. So one of the things I did is I came up with a way that has way better return on investment. I started in 2017, and I said I don't want to do fundraising, I want to do Maine raising. And I asked people to take the same amount they give me. Didn't matter if it was $5, $5,000. It didn't matter. Invest it back in our community, say that I wouldn't take the money and that I wanted our community to thrive. And bang for buck in 2018, I was the best performing candidate of any of the big races anywhere in the state of Maine. I spent about a nickel a vote of my own money, and I ended up getting 5.7% of the race, of the votes. And the initial polls on me were less than 1%. So it made a huge difference. And I'm hoping that we can apply the lessons that we've learned in Maine, what works. And we knew that was a really good return on investment. We have data on that. And what doesn't work, and throwing a whole bunch of ads at people really, really doesn't work.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, I did some political outreach during this election cycle, and people were fatigued. People were angry. People didn't want another text. They didn't want another phone call. They didn't want another piece of direct mail in the box. They wanted nothing to do with it. And yet we just kept hammering. I'm on lists for both political parties, and every day you could expect at least 15 to 20 texts.
Oh yeah, it was like have you seen the movie Better Off Dead from the 80s, right? I want my $3. I mean, it was $2, but the emails that I saw were all asking for $3 this year. So I guess inflation hit, but it was daily. And I didn't even sign up for these lists. I don't know how I even got on these email lists. So it was astonishing. My mother, who lives out in Washington State, she was getting daily emails for the Maine Senate race. Like it was just obnoxious. And Maine is a pretty inexpensive media market. The amount of spend is just, it was outrageous. It was by far the most expensive race we've ever had in the state of Maine. It was on every media channel. You couldn't turn on the TV. You couldn't even turn on your phone. Apps that never had ads before suddenly had ads. You couldn't watch YouTube. You were getting text messages. I called the Secretary of State trying to get my phone number out of the database. I was getting upwards of 10 or 20 text messages every day from different organizations, sometimes from the same organization. And like you said, it was oppressive. And actually some of the mailers veered into creepy. They started sending out mailers that were like, here is your voting record. It's public. Everybody will know. They won't know who you voted for, but they're going to know if you voted. And the one I got was not actually accurate, but that doesn't make me want to vote for you.
Yeah.
That one makes me want to vote for anybody that's not you when you
right.
send me those things.
Although I got to be honest, thank you for telling me all the information that's out there. I mean, this is one of those moments where, I've had people go, well, how did you get this? I go, well, off your voter registration. It is public knowledge.
Right.
And I think a lot of people don't have that understanding of what information they've given out to the public.
Well, I actually spent, I didn't hit Stacey Abrams level, but I did spend a lot of my year registering voters when I could. Obviously, it was a pandemic, so it limited things a little bit. But our voter registration cards in Maine are not clear that they are going to sell your information. It is not clear. It is not clear that when you put your phone number on there, you are signing up to get texts. You are signing up to be called incessantly. And actually, that's something that I've been in contact with state legislators about it. That if you're not providing clarity that people could be getting that information that way, that's a real disservice to your constituents. I mean, ultimately, it's great that people can buy that voter information, but it's not so great for voters if we didn't realize that we were consenting to that.
But, in this new technological world, this is the future. So as voters, I never got upset when I get a text or a call. All right, this is the world we live in. When I get more mail, it's the world we live in. I'm confused, and I don't understand how people feel so invaded or angry. When someone calls, you go, hey, okay, thanks, I got it. Have a good day. We've become so tightly wound around this stuff. I don't know how you pull back, but this is the world we live in. We're not going back to, knocking on people's doors to talk to people, which they get upset about. We're just not in the near future.
Well, I mean, I think that Maine in particular, states like Maine, I would guess that Alaska probably falls into this category too. We like a real big personal space buffer. So I think that these tactics are more offensive to most folks in Maine than they would be to the general population of the country. But I mean, for me, they felt incredibly invasive. But the thing I was more upset about than the privacy issues was the waste. I mean, when you're telling me that you're out there to try and make my life better and you send me 16 mailers in a single day, most of which aren't recyclable, and has a mailer ever changed your mind?
No.
Has an ad ever changed your mind? Have you ever saw an ad and go, oh my gosh, I'm going to vote for that person? No.
And
no.
Look, I spent the entire day, election day, handing out flyers on a voting line. Admitting I'm not changing anybody's mind. This is how things have always been done. So we do this. It's that exercise.
Well, I mean, but we've got to stop.
So the idea is then, if I'm getting your idea right, the idea is that we then decide to spend money in local
right? Like
establishments.
we have the ability to make correct. So it's if we want to switch kind of to talking to the Georgia race. So the Georgia race is not unique as a race generally, but it's different than the rest of the races that were run this fall because they've already had in the very recent past millions of dollars thrown at them for both of these candidates. So they've already gotten everybody that is essentially gettable. I saw an article that came out in the last 24 hours or so that said in 2016, 22% of eligible voters in Georgia were not registered. And this year there were 2%. So, I'm sure that is directly credited to work of those like Stacey Abrams on the ground. That's something I can't help you with. I'm in Maine. I can't tell you anything about registering folks in Georgia. That being said, there's only 2% left. So really your only options to pick up voters at this point in time are people who could not vote and people who did not vote. So you couldn't vote because maybe you weren't registered to vote, maybe you weren't old enough, maybe you were sick, whatever those reasons are, that can be rectified, but you're not going to pick up a huge amount between now and January because there's just, they're down to 2%. There's
you're not going to get new voters. You're
amount.
right. There are no new voters. What this exercise is from this point till January 5th, I believe, is getting people out there.
Right.
is making sure they've got transportation, making sure they've got a plan to do it, making sure they execute that plan, making sure that there are pathways for them to vote.
and and that's, I mean, that is an excellent use of money doing that. And I really think that if people are throwing money at political organizations, that's where they should be doing it. They should be doing to on the ground organizations in Georgia, not any sort of national effort. Fund those groups that are doing that on the ground in the trenches work. You're not going to get any good bang for buck out of ads. You're not going to get any good bang for buck out of mailers. Those are going to be totally ineffective in this particular campaign, and they may actually harm you. It's really hard if you are somebody who is food, housing, and or employment insecure to get those mailers. They're about $1 a piece to produce and mail. So if you get 10 of them in a day, I mean, like, you could have fed your family off what they just basically set on fire.
Right.
So you hit a point where you're like, well, I'm glad that you could take the time to send me a postcard, but I really need food. And that's sort of where Main Raising came from is, you have a few different ways to get in touch with people who are potential voters. You can push stuff out at them and hope you catch their eye and or don't offend them. Or you can do something that catches them in a more serendipitous way. I mean, the door knocking is not quite as much this year because we're in a pandemic, but I don't know of anybody who's like, I had a politician come to my house at 8 a.m. and I wasn't wearing pants, and that made me want to vote for them. I think that's a really hard sell a lot of the time. Or, I was disciplining my kid, or I was making dinner, or I was raking the yard, and I totally had things to do that weren't that. And there are some people that enjoy those visits, but I would say that they're probably in the minority, particularly from my experience going around and getting signatures. It is, they're happy to talk, but they really want you out of their house very quickly most of the time because they've got other stuff to do.
Sure.
So the method that I came up with is a more serendipitous way to meet people. So what I did is I said, okay, I'm going to take small businesses, teachers, and not-for-profits, and we're going to invest in those parts of our community. So for small businesses, in a statewide race, it's great. You can literally just say any business anywhere in Georgia, place an order for anything, do your Christmas shopping, just buy one of your Christmas gifts from Georgia. That's it. And when you're placing the order, in the special instructions say, hey, I really wanted to support Georgia's business community. I hope you go out and take a look at these candidates. I think they're going to really help too. And, they've obviously got supporters that are interested in Georgia being successful. When is the last time a politician ever did something that benefited you directly when you're not a multimillionaire? It's not very often. It's not very often that you meet somebody by them helping you. The same thing with Donors Choose. It's a website. It's a 501c3, so you get a tax deduction out of it. These are all arm's length market transactions. You can go in, donate $5. Say you want to throw $30 at it. Just carve off a little bit, $5. You donate to any teacher with any project that's interesting to you in Georgia. And after you donate, you leave a note. Hey, please go and, look up these candidates. They're coming up. I really want to support education, and I think that this will be a better way to support education. We have
So you're basically bribing people.
No, because there's no requirement to do it.
Okay.
Right. So these are all market transactions. And so basically we're gossiping. We found a new avenue to gossip because you're not giving somebody something extra. If you donate, you're getting a tax write-off if you choose to take it. If you purchase something, you're getting a product. You're not paying any less or more than the product is advertised for. So this is really not any different than being at the grocery store and talking to the clerk and going, oh my gosh, this candidate is great, or oh my gosh, I can't stand this candidate. I always recommend people go with the upbeat method of sharing information. Not everybody's going to choose to.
Yeah, but here's the thing: the negative seems to sell a lot better than the upbeat.
I don't know that it does with this particular method.
Okay.
I mean, I think if you're like, hey, I'm buying your stuff, but please don't vote for Kelly. She's awful and does insider trading. I mean, it's true. but I don't know that that's really what you want to hear with that mechanism. And then the other thing that I recommend people do is, pick a not-for-profit, a food bank, a domestic violence shelter, something that is really helpful and community-based. And we saw great results with this in Maine. Again, the bang for buck was phenomenal. We just didn't have enough bucks banging. I think it's going to make a huge difference in Georgia. Say there's 200 million that goes into this runoff, which would not be out of the realm of possibility when the whole country is throwing money at it. Carve off 5 to 10%. There's going to be plenty for all the methods. I'm saying grab 5 to 10% of what you would invest in this race normally and go and make somebody's day better. Go and directly help somebody. Not only is it probably exponentially more effective at marketing your candidate, but it feels a whole lot less icky than just knowing you contributed to 0.00001 second of a commercial.
No, I'm with you on that. But my question, and this is kind of where we'll wrap this up, is you need 100,000 votes. Does this get to 100,000 people? I mean, there are only so many small business owners. There's only so much of this you get. I'm trying to figure out how you get 100,000 or 200,000 votes that separate these two candidates.
Well, so the votes you're picking up when you do this, the Democrats are going to vote for Democrats. The Republicans are most likely going to vote for Republicans. You're picking up the people who are pissed off and or independent and or didn't bother. And so if you're looking for a way to motivate those people, none of the traditional marketing tactics will work. And what I can tell you is when I did this in Maine, and it's actually, we've only been doing this in Georgia for just a couple of days. When I did this in Maine, I could tell it was working because people would come find me. They would come to my website. They would email me and they would go, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea who you are. This is phenomenal." And I wouldn't just get a voter. I'd get an advocate. I'd get somebody who'd go tell, their neighbor and their mom and their partner and, everybody down at the diner. Like it was magical. I got 16,552 votes as a nobody. No one had ever heard of me. I'd never run for office. I am an introvert and I had very little public exposure to anything. And that was while I was developing on the fly. So it wasn't even that well developed when I was doing it then. And I was also doing it in a congressional district that had 375 municipalities. And so saying, hey, I want you to invest in Maine, but only in one of these 375 towns. Please go take a look. Being able to do it statewide makes it much more effective. We've just been doing this for a handful of days in Georgia, and I'm already getting teachers that are seeking me out, and they're like, tell me more about your candidates. This is great, so invest in the community. Hashtag it Georgia Raising. I think it's going to make a difference, and it might make the difference.
Good stuff. And the website, GeorgiaRaising.com, we'll get links on how folks can check that out. Tiffany, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tiffany Bond. Make sure you check out the website, GeorgiaRaising.com. We'll get links out. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1935. The Committee for Industrial Organizations was created by 8 unions as part of the American Federation of Labor. United Mine Workers President John L. Lewis was the driving force behind this new committee. His aim was to organize mass production industrial workers as opposed to focusing on those in the skilled trades. While the American Federation of Labor had included some industrial unions, the craft unionists were the dominant force in the organization. The Great Depression had hit industrial workers and their unions unions hard. Leaders from the heavily affected unions pressed for more support from the AFL. In response, the AFL did authorize organizing drives in the automobile, rubber, and steel industries, but they gave little financial support or effective leadership to those unions. Matters came to a head at the AFL's 1935 convention when mine workers president John L. Lewis punched the president of the Carpenters Union. Afterwards, Lewis called together various industrial union leaders, including Sidney Hillman, head of the Amalgamated Clothing Workers, and Harvey Fremming of the Oil Workers Union, to discuss the creation of the CIO. In its statement of purpose, the CIO declared its aim to encourage the AFL to organize by industry. However, the AFL's leadership was not sympathetic to what they saw as an internal rivalry. In 1936, the AFL suspended all of the CIO unions. This led to the industrial union's breakaway from the AFL to form a rival federation. The CIO changed its name to the Congress of Industrial Organizations. By 1938, the CIO had amassed 3 million members. The CIO ran successful organizing drives in auto, mining, meatpacking, and steel. The two union organizations finally remerged in 1955, forming what is known today as the AFL-CIO.
Good grief, cry many progressives. How has America turned so right-wing that a flabby, narcissistic, wannabe dictator like Trump was even in the running? But wait, aside from a minority of racist, xenophobic, misogynistic voters, plus a bunch of uber-wealthy corporate profiteers making a killing from his rich man's agenda, most of Trump's rank-and-file voters are not right-wingers at all. To see evidence of this, look at the multitude of overtly progressive ballot issues that won majority support on Election Day, even in so-called Trump country. 53% of Arizona voters said yes to a tax surcharge on incomes above $250,000 a year, specifically to raise teacher pay and recruit more teachers. A whopping 78% of Oregon voters approved a populist proposition to put strict controls on the corrupting power of big money corporate donations and elections. 61% of Floridians voted to raise the state's minimum wage to $15 an hour, a working class advance vehemently opposed by corporate giants and right-wing groups. 57% voted yes on a Colorado provision requiring corporations to let employees earn paid time off for medical and family needs. Between 53 and 69% of voters in 6 states, including in such supposedly conservative bastions as Arizona, Mississippi, and South Dakota, approved initiatives liberalizing and even legalizing marijuana and other drug use. Plus, there were some big symbolic victories, such as Mississippi replacing a Confederate symbol on its state flag with a magnolia blossom. This is Jim Hightower saying, the hope that resides in these progressive policy positions is the prospect that a truly great American majority might yet be forged, not around some mega politician, but around our people's basic values of fairness and justice for all.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the good folks of Georgia, they're going to have an interesting couple of days. These next 50 plus days are going to be all the resources, all of the eyes, all of the attention, all of the volunteers. Thank goodness I don't live in Georgia. Now, I'll be honest, look, this is historic times. I mean, Pennsylvania had such focus on it in this election cycle, and everyone was calling into here, and everyone was active in the state, and it's exciting to be part of the game, but at some point, maybe a deep breath. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, where we are and what the next several days are going to look like. I've asked our good friend David Yankovich to come talk with us. David is probably the most important digital strategist in the entire free world, in my view, and a good friend. David, thanks for taking time for us.
Wow, what an introduction. Thanks, Rick.
So, I got to tell you, I wouldn't want to live in Georgia right now. I think people there are going to be inundated with everything from phone calls to text to mailings to ads, everything, slamming them. Isn't there a fear that people are going to turn away?
Oh, absolutely. And, I think that everybody's kind of getting mad at me about this, but I think that that's why one of our best messages right now is that we get it. We're tired of this too. We're tired of the anger. We're tired of the arguing. We're tired of all this BS, and we're just trying to get people some help, and I think that if we can do that and we don't get into the whole Republican smear crap that they're trying to pull and everything else down there, I think we're going to be okay. But it's, imagine, the last year of your life, all you've done is see political ads. Like, I'm so happy they're not in my emails anymore and all that. But then if you're in Georgia, you're waking up and, oh my gosh, it's going to be a blitz.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, Georgia right now is the center of the universe. If Democrats get both of those seats, which it is possible because Loeffler's a horribly hated candidate from people I talked to in Georgia, and Perdue not overly loved. There's an opportunity, and as my friend Eric Robertson pointed out last week, Georgia, if you let people actually cast their ballots and don't keep throwing them off the voter rolls, is actually a blue state.
Well, I mean, that's with any election. I don't think that the Republicans can actually win nationally on any level whatsoever anymore without the disinformation and misinformation and propaganda and, voter disenfranchisement and gerrymandering and all the things that happen. I don't think they would win any state ever again if elections were fair. But that's my personal opinion. Georgia's a tough state still. We can't take it lightly. And if we go into this and we think that we have this, we've seen it time and time again that they've been able to hunker down. That's why right now Mitch McConnell and, Trump and everybody are trying to cast so much delegitimacy on Biden's win and pushing this. This is their strategy. They do this stuff. If they're going to try to say that Biden stole the election, the Democrats are, radical socialists and they're taking your votes, and they're going to try to push this stuff. So the only thing that we can do in this situation is to go into these races and make sure that the candidates are talking about the issues that people are facing. Don't get pulled in all the different directions. And, everybody, argues with me on this, but I'm probably the only person in the country that's, ran half the southern races that have won or more. We can't get into the bickering with the Republicans on this stuff. We have to just hit home as hard as we possibly can. This is about you. This is about your lives, your future, especially John Ossoff. He doesn't have the brand yet. He hasn't, he doesn't have the issues. You have to run on more than I am against Perdue. You have to be able to run on who you are and what your message is and talking about those issues. And I think he's going to have a little bit more time to do this now, and I'm excited to see the whole country kind of line up in this state and back him up. But, we got to respect Georgia. We have to respect that we don't speak to the South or speak for the South. We can't possibly comprehend it. It's just like when I was down in Alabama. You have to have a healthy degree of respect for the voters and how they feel about things. And they're a lot different than they are in the North. Georgia's much, much different of a state than no offense, on Pennsylvania or Michigan or, California. They have a whole set of different issues and a whole different belief system that we have to respect and understand, and we have to support our candidates. And our candidates need to be hitting the issues home.
And that's what I've been saying for the last 15 years, that we need to be hitting on issues. But what the era of Trump has brought us is this cult of personality kind of thing that hopefully we're going to be done with at some point so we can get back to talking about issues. But you brought up, I want to go to something that just kind of grabbed me, and that there are all these people out there who think, these crazy thoughts of voter fraud and all of this stuff of putting roadblocks in people's way and that being okay. I can't tell you how many people have said, "Wow, we know what we really need, Rick. We need a national voter ID law." And I'm going, the reality is when the state of Pennsylvania was going through the trial process, in their stipulation of fact before the trial, they admitted there's never been an instance of a case that's been tried and convicted where voter ID would have stopped that person from voting. There's just never been one. So it's a solution in search of a problem that doesn't even exist.
Well, it's not a solution in search of a problem that doesn't exist. It's obfuscation of what's actually happening. They don't want to talk about 240,000 dead Americans on COVID. They don't want to talk about the military. They don't want to talk about the economy on the brink right now. So they want to talk about the election. And the thing is when we talk about it, when we quote tweet them, when we share their information, we're also spreading that information around as well. We're helping them amplify exactly what they're doing. That's why they don't care about getting ratioed 100 to 1, because you're spreading their message. We're doing it every day, and I've been guilty of it for a long time as well. But one thing that we saw, and we know that this works now, and I mean, there's a lot of conversations to have about the party and about what we need to do and move forward. But decency won, in this race. Biden was able to reach voters that he promised that he was going to be able to reach, and he was decent about it. And he had a message that kind of Trump couldn't get away from.
No.
Aren't you guys tired of this?
I mean, that's to me that is the most important message right there. Because you know what I did for like 15 minutes today?
What's that?
I argued about how I do not like green bean casserole.
Okay.
I haven't done that in 4 years. I haven't had that kind of ridiculous, kind of wasted time argument or disagreement in 4 years. And as I'm going through this, I don't really like mushroom soup, and I don't really care for the idea that you're going to ruin a perfectly good green bean. And I just sat here and I'm going, I didn't think about Trump for these last 15 minutes. This is going to be glorious.
Yeah. And I mean, that's how we do this. And, it's not going to be by going to Trump supporters and rubbing it in their faces. And,
No.
All that. And I get it. Like, I mean, I started, when I got back into politics, or when I got into politics, really, it was taking, my stepdaughter to a Hillary Clinton event. And, the Trump supporters covered in fake blood, harassing us and calling her the word. And, that was a moment of indecency for me that kind of kick-started everything that got me to this point here talking to you on the show now. And I'm mad too. I'm not happy about the way that people have been treated. And the thing is from a mental health standpoint, when you're being abused, you say, I'm not going to be abused anymore. You don't allow it. And then you kind of see what's happening out there with like Michelle Bachmann and, the fake holy roller kind of, Christianity stuff that's happening and what they're pushing about Jesus that doesn't want Biden to be president. That's the last refuge of the abuser, is to kind of go into the playing the victim themselves. And so the best way for us to do anything as a party, as, moving forward, but also, to grow. Like, you can't be putting up walls for people to not be able to come across the aisle. Like, a lot of people are waking up to Trump right now. And, oh, my God, he can be beat. Oh, my God, like, he isn't all powerful. Oh, my God. And I mean, some of these people are level 5, some of them are level 4, but there's a lot of level 2s and 3s out there. 71 million voters voted for this guy. And, we have a message right now and an opportunity to show, like, the economy didn't crash. You didn't steal your freaking guns. We want you to have good health care, and we want your family to be safe. And that's it. Like, all the other stuff that you're hearing about radical socialism, all the things that are going on out here, and defund the police, and all these issues, like, the issues that you need to know about, and the things that actually are happening in real time right now are your family's getting health care. We're working on the economy. Everything is good. We have the reins here, and and continue growing the stock market, because the economy wins elections. And I saw that in exit poll after exit poll. The economy wasn't shaken hard enough for them to abandon Trump, on this. And there's a lot of people out there I know who support him for his horrible policies, but there's also a lot of people out there. And I wrote this article, I wrote this tweet about him all being racist, but it's not. There's a lot of people who just are Republican. The economy's going well. Or whatever. I don't care about all this other stuff. I'm not political.
Yeah, no, all I heard from people was, look at my 401k. That's all I care about. The reality is not all Trump supporters are racists. I'll be the first to say that. But all racists are Trump supporters.
Absolutely. And that is the thing. Like, we cannot allow hate and we cannot allow abuse. So if you're a Democrat out there and you're trying to reach across the aisle and you're trying to talk to your family members and kind of bring them back in, and you're getting hate or abuse, you need to walk away from the conversation and don't do it. And we don't need to allow that.
Yeah.
Don't ever take that. And as a party, we don't need to take that. But on your side of this, if we ever actually, this is a moment for us to really hold the presidency for a generation. They messed up. They overstepped. They tried to take over the whole darn government. I don't know how many words I can say bad on your show. So, but they went after us. They went after it all, and this is going to cost them. This is going to they forced through the Supreme Court. Like, if we are smart about this and we don't kill each other as Democrats on all sides of the spectrum, we will hold power for 25 years.
Yeah.
We've seen this before. And, it all comes down to, it's okay for you to have a completely different opinion here. And it's okay for you to have a different opinion here. We need the Doug Joneses in Alabama running just as much as we need, the Mike Levins in California or the AOCs in New York. We need these parts of the party. Everybody who is here and is doing this, working together and rowing in the same direction, is a big piece of why we are successful. And that's what makes it so great. If we were Europe, we'd have 13 different political parties. We don't. We're the United States, we have two. Two main ones. And, that's what we need to get back to here is this kind of semblance of like, it's okay to have, to want the Green New Deal. Like all of us want to get there. And it's also okay for us to have to work with some Republicans to get done because, like it or not, Joe Biden's going to have to negotiate with Mitch McConnell because he's still Senate Majority Leader unless Al Gross wins Alaska, and that's an if, and if we pick up 2 Senate seats. So, he's going to have to govern as a moderate. He's not going to be able to govern as the progressive that he's going to need to be with COVID and with all the economic issues and everything happening. So, we can't kill the president-elect before he gets out there, and we have to all understand that, we can do this, and it's okay to be different. That's what's so great about being Democrats. That's what always makes us so strong. When we talk about being inclusive and being forgiving and being good people, we have to own that too during elections with people who don't agree with us, including our own party.
No, and as an example of that, as I've been saying on the show here, the day after the election, I'm on a picket line with 55, striking Teamsters who, probably half to 3/4 of them voted for Trump. And as I tweeted out and got a lot of pushback over, I don't care who they voted for. They are right now engaging in the right fight. This is something we agree on. This is something we should be fighting because that's the common enemy. And it's one that I think ultimately could pull us back together because I don't care if you're a Trump supporter or you're a Biden supporter. If you're struggling to make ends meet, if you're on the treadmill and you're damn near about to fall off, if you're about ready to be evicted, if you don't know where the next meal for your kids is coming from, it doesn't matter who you voted for. Poor and broke and struggling is still poor, broke, and struggling.
And that's what it comes down to. And I've been honored to be able to retweet some of that content for you that you've been posting, and that's how we do this. And we have to help each other, and that's how you bring people across the line. That's how we build coalitions again. The thing is, I think by all accounts, everybody agrees Biden gave one of the best speeches I think we've seen in a very, very, very long time, at least maybe even modern history, the other night when he spoke about bringing people together and doing this stuff. And, this is how we do it. This is the necessary work, especially unions. And, I've been saying this for years. Since I even ran, or before I ran, is bringing unions back into the fold, bringing back organizing in the way that we used to do it, bringing them to the 21st century online. There is a lot that we can do here that, is very easy for us to pick up and very smart, but also it's the right thing to do because a strong union, a strong union country, we're going to have better labor laws, better safety laws, better wages, better health care. I'm preaching to the choir with you, but for the people out there, you may think they vote for Trump, and they did, but they only voted for Trump because they thought that he was the person who was going to help them. And some of them might be a little bit on the other side of that, but that's a big message that we have to hit on. And I know that I'm getting all kinds of hate from my own party, left and right, trying to say, and because I'm not trying to say what's appease the Nazis. And neither are you, and neither is anybody in the party here. No one's saying that we should forgive all the horrible acts that they've done or anything. What I'm saying is that we need to have a message that's for the American people and not political parties. We need to stop arguing and responding to everything the Republicans say and start speaking to the American people again. And we'll start winning more elections like we did this one.
Yeah,
Biden's message.
For me, this is not a moment to rub people's nose and things. Now's, as I've been saying, now is the time to get things done. Now is the time for us to try and find that common ground and actually get things accomplished because we haven't done anything for 4 years. Nothing's gotten done. Our roads are still crummy. Our bridges are still problematic. We still have crappy broadband across this country. There's so many things that we should and could be doing that, well, we haven't because we've been fighting each other. And for me, it's time to tear down this virtual wall of misinformation and actually talk to each other. Now, as I said, I've been doing this walking a picket line, talking to these folks, and the reason that they're out on this picket line, and this is one of these really important moments. These Trump supporting people crossed on the threshold, out on the picket line, and went on strike because their healthcare benefits are getting unaffordable. The company, jacked up their rates. And proposed jacking up their rates, proposed slapping them with a maintenance fee on their 401ks, and the raises that they offered were nowhere near going to cover them. So they're out there for health care. And yet tomorrow, you got the Supreme Court about to undo the Affordable Care Act, or at least hear arguments for when they undo it. So there's a moment for me where you go, look, we can have these conversations. And what's interesting, and before I don't want to filibuster you, but what's interesting is while these folks are trying to figure out what they're going to do while they're on strike, I'm telling them, go sign up for the Affordable Care Act. You're in Pennsylvania. You should be thankful and lucky because your governor, a Democrat, said, hey, we're going to expand Medicaid and you'll have access to it. I think this is how you change hearts and minds, by actually helping and making their lives better.
That's government. That's leadership. That's exactly right. You know, if we're ever going to have a moment, I'm everybody out there who's listening to me, if you want to win this election only, then you did it. Congratulations. You can rub everybody's face in it. We can beat up on everybody. We can dunk on everybody, you know, and that can be it. You know, we'll lose the midterms in 2 years. We won't have the House. They'll impeach Joe Biden. They'll impeach Kamala Harris, and they'll put the speaker in of whoever they want when we lose the House. And you guys know it's true. Or we can destroy Trumpism. We can destroy all the misinformation and the disinformation. However, like, we can do this by helping people. We can do this by leading. We can do this by changing hearts and minds. And if you think that that's not possible, then I just encourage you to open up a history book of any time throughout time ever that anything has ever gotten done. It has never been easy. Like watch Invictus with Nelson Mandela, or you know what he did through those times. And any of this, like you're not going to be able to build a coalition that's going to last a generation or two and actually make real change in this country by building up walls and telling people to screw off. And that's kind of my fear for this. And you're so right, Rick. This is how we do it. And this is the moment, especially for union workers across the country right now. You know, one of the biggest coalitions of the Democratic Party that we've lost over the last 20 years, you know, the working class white men and really, you know, even to anybody in the middle class here, you know, to be able to get this back is just a no-brainer. And it's easy to do. Let's help them. Let's help them get their health care. And let's help them get back on their feet and do this. And that's one part of the coalition. And we start building ourselves back up. This isn't really that difficult. It's just that everybody kind of has to put, you know, their egos and their feelings down a little bit and be able to come to the table and have a real conversation. And I'm talking about our party. And if we can do that, you know, I think that we're going to be a lot better shape. But you're so right. That's how we do this. And we've seen it. We have proof of concept. We've seen it win. And, you know, I mean, even in Conor Lamb's race a couple of years ago, you know, in that type of, environment. And Jones in Alabama in 2017, unfortunately, this time we couldn't pull it out. But, you know, that's we got to talk about the issues. We got to talk about what people are going through, and we have to stick to them and stop fighting with the Republicans on everything because they're just saying things and we're spreading it for them.
And because at the end of the day, the more divided we are, the less we get done, and the less people's lives get better, and the more we have massive redistribution of wealth from us to the very wealthy. And for me, that's the key in all of this. Because and I guess, you know, this strike came for me personally at a right time. Unfortunately for these workers, they're in this situation. The company forced them into this. But for me, it came at the right time mentally because it is the right fight. It hits on all of the themes that divide us. It hits on all of the themes that I think can help to bring us together. And as I said in the piece that I wrote over at Daily Kos, if you believe in making America great, or if you believe in build back better, this is an opportunity to do both.
And that's it. And at the end of the day, though, like it's an opportunity for you to help somebody who probably isn't going to get that help. An opportunity to amplify something that is important, that's going to affect children and the families and entire communities. And if you can't get on board with the left or the right or the middle, you know, you can maybe get into it with this is just the right thing to do, or
Yep.
It's the Christian thing to do, or whatever. But you know, it's time that we start thinking about things differently and doing it. We have to lead, and we have to be mature about this stuff. And you know, and you're right. I mean, this is I hate quoting this, but you know, it's a season of opportunity for everything right now. And if we don't capture this, we are going to hurt ourselves in ways that we can't even measure. Like this is our time if we want it.
But you're right. I mean, do you want to win elections, or was this the one you wanted? You know, and the best analogy I can come up with is, if you remember Barry Sanders.
Oh yeah, Detroit Lions.
Remember when Barry would score a touchdown? Do you remember what Barry Sanders would do when he scored a touchdown?
That I don't remember.
You remember Ickey Woods?
No.
You don't remember the Ickey Shuffle?
Oh yeah, Yeah.
Of
yeah,
course
yeah.
you're right. Now you've just made my point. Barry Sanders would score a touchdown and he would walk over to the referee and he'd hand him the ball and he'd run back to the sideline like, I've done this 1,000 times. I'm going to do it 1,000 times again. It's not a big deal. Ickey Woods would score a touchdown. Man, he'd be dancing. He had a whole thing. He was in the league maybe 2-3 years. We don't even remember his last name. We just remember the Ickey Shuffle. Do we want to be Barry or do we want to be Ickey?
Yeah. And do you want to, be one of the greatest of all time and, legendary or not? And that's it. I mean, that's where we are. And, we spent 4 years trying to get to this point and beat Donald Trump. But I got to tell you guys, like the battle is nowhere near close to being done. We have a whole generation of Supreme Court justices. I mean, we can't let up for a second. We can't let up even a little bit, because if we do, we're going to have a divided country even more. And, and Donald Trump's going to continue pushing it. We got to be able to unite, do this, and move forward and be smarter than we were before. Be smarter than 2012 or 14 or 16 or, the 90s, whatever. I mean, we have, all of us here pride ourselves on being the smartest people in the world on social media now, right? So, if we're actually the smartest people in the world, let's actually take a deep dive into this and look at what we really want. If we really want to have a Democratic Party that lasts for 25 or 30 years and, that's very strong, and we have the presidency and we have leadership, we can make this what we want it to be now. It's on us. And, don't screw it up. Like, don't squander this because we're mad.
You're absolutely right. We've got a lot of work to do, and we're going to hopefully get to it, and hopefully you'll come back and share some thoughts as this runoff happens and as all the chaos begins, because I see lots of interesting days ahead as Trump continues to spasm and all of that. But David, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, Rex. Thanks, everybody.
As always, great stuff from our good friend David Yankovich. Make sure you check him out on Twitter. As I said, one of the top digital strategists in the country. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You listen to the Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1909. That was the day members of the industrial workers of the world began a free speech fight in Spokane, Washington. Wobblies often intersected seasonal workers through street corner soapboxing. Many towns and cities worked to resist IWW organizing efforts by passing ordinances against such rallies. Wobblies challenged these repressive tactics. They would descend on a town or city in great numbers, forcing mass arrests that overwhelmed local authorities and judicial systems. At Spokane, the organizing campaign began a year earlier. Wobblies mobilized against local employment agencies that charged workers fees for jobs that didn't exist. The campaign was so popular that the IWW was able to establish a union hall, hold meetings and lectures, and establish a newspaper. The Spokane City Council quickly passed an ordinance against street corner rallies. When Wobblies learned that religious groups were exempt from the restrictive ordinance, they announced November 2nd as Free Speech Day in Spokane. They put out the call, wanted men to fill the jails of Spokane. By the end of the month, as many as 500 had been arrested. The War Department even offered up nearby Fort Wright to handle the glut of prisoners. A young Elizabeth Gurley Flynn arrived in Spokane to soapbox. Efforts to arrest her were briefly frustrated after she chained herself to a nearby lamppost. Flynn made good use of her time in jail. She reported on appalling prison conditions and accused the local sheriff of operating a brothel out of the women's prison section. The free speech fight gained nationwide attention and enjoyed wide public support. By March, all prisoners were released, the ordinance had been rescinded, and employment agencies' license revoked. The IWW won big.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the really smart guy who runs the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the brain surgeon, The guy that you would really think would get the whole COVID thing, would from a medical position, would be the one who'd be most, protective of himself. The one who actually would have the basis of knowing how deadly or how dangerous or how infectious or all of that stuff, and would wear the mask and would social distance and do all that. The one guy in the administration just got diagnosed with COVID. Evidently, the Ben Carson is one of the many now in the Trump administration infected with the COVID, and he claims that he's almost through it. Still a little concerned, but almost through it. But you would think, of all of them, if there was anyone in the administration, it would be the Ben Carson. Evidently not. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top news of the day, I've asked our good friend, former Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney, to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, good morning. Good evening, Rick. How are you?
Probably as good as you.
It's been a long day.
It has, but you know what? I keep going. There's a light at the end of that tunnel, that maybe we get back to a place where we're not always talking about the president and we're not always talking about what divides us, and maybe we can figure out how to get the pothole out in front of the house filled.
Sure.
But I'm looking at this Ben Carson. I mean, come on, Ben. If there's anybody in the administration who knows better, it's got to be Ben Carson, right?
Well, I haven't looked at the history of it. Was he at events without the masks and things, or?
It didn't really say. They don't know how he got it, as far as I've seen. But just the mere fact of he put himself in this position where you'd go, this is the guy who should know better, if anyone, right?
Yeah, I mean, you never know. It's people. I have a friend of mine. She got it, but she worked in a job where even though she wore a mask, it was just one of those industries that's a real problem, where she was at.
Yeah, but he said that he was feeling terrific with fever of 101 and chills and muscle cramps and respiratory issues and fatigue, but he was feeling terrific. And even in this, what is it, in this world, even when you're feeling crappy, you got to say you're feeling terrific. Is it the Trump effect now? I mean, is this what that is?
Probably because he's a physician.
I don't know. Just nuts.
Right.
Let's move along. Esper's fired. Actually said that he hopes his replacement isn't a yes man, because God help us if he is. Thoughts?
Well, I was asked about this morning, and I don't think technically, first of all, that it's going to make a difference, because the system is so geared that it's going to be Trump-proof in the sense that there's going to be a deputy. It's not like for the next X amount of weeks that this is the end of the world on that. But the thing I was saying, I mean, more can get fired. This is the end of the administration. So things are just going to continue on, whether, he's there or he's not, and there might be more fired. But it's sort of like, okay, why was he fired? This is just, it's a window dressing thing.
Yeah.
For the president. That's all. He was no good. I fired him. Well, so what? How many weeks are left?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things again where the impulsiveness is another reason that I'm looking forward to him going.
Mm-hmm. And well, also there's an anger now, and somebody's going to be blamed for something, and again, if there was 6 months left or something, it would be one thing, but this is it, and so there might be more to come. But
right.
Again, I think this is sort of the end of the road window dressing.
So, do you think this goes any further? Because Trump's making the I'm going to fight this. McConnell hasn't said he's come out and he's evidently not going to recognize Biden as the president elect. You got Fox News saying that they're not going to address him as president elect. How long do you think this goes on?
Well, first of all, with McConnell, I think we have to remember one thing about Mitch McConnell. He's known Joe Biden for, how many decades?
Right.
Now, he's going to say certain things or do certain things, but he's known him a long, long time. They've cut a lot of deals together over a period of time. So McConnell's going to, let certain things things play out right now. But as far as the actual movement, there is no direct path. I looked today at the statements made. What's the issues? Let's take the poll. Let's take the issue of poll workers not allowed. Trump designees not allowed in the room. Right? Okay.
Right.
Let's take that issue. That actually was into a filing into the court, and it was dismissed because there's a tape. In every case, they were in the room. They were in the room. So now there's not a lot of media on this, but it was dismissed. And if you look at the other filings that are coming, they're going to file, which is his right to file anything.
Frivolous lawsuits, right?
Yeah, there is no clear path of the filings. This is not Broward County with 537 votes that decides who wins, the state of Florida, and decides who becomes president of the United States. Technically, let's say there's a motion, something happens, and let's give Trump Pennsylvania, right?
Right.
They're still the other
He's still
state.
lost.
He's still lost. So, but the actual filings themselves, they have to be able to have made a difference to overturn the election. If you look back at the Dornan-Sanchez race in California years ago, where Bob Dornan was beat by Loretta Sanchez, the Congress itself, on a three-person panel of which I was on, with Steny Hoyer and the late Vern Ehlers, we looked at that. We did find votes out there that were made in California with people that weren't citizens. But the bottom line of all the votes that were one by one looked at, by the way, it came to a question of maybe 1,200 some votes, which we don't know whether they went with Dornan or Sanchez, Rick. And the bottom line was it was not enough to overturn the election, and the election was not overturned. I mean, I can give you, case examples like that. This is no different. And it has to be enough fraud, for example, of a state where Biden wins by 20,000 votes. There would have to be, 25,100 votes that they know went to Biden and shouldn't have, and that is not going to happen.
Right.
That's the bottom line of this entire thing. Are there some irregularities? Yes, there always are in every election. But what the filings are doing, they're going to be dismissed one by one. Now, there is one thing that can happen. If it happens, I think, you might as well call out the military to surround the Supreme Court. There could be a case under American law where the Supreme Court delays past December, I think it's 14th, and then the electors don't make a decision and it goes to the House. That would be the most unusual thing in American history if it happened. And that's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen with a guy who lost by 5 million votes.
Well, right. But that's the only legal path there, and that would be so unusual. Like I said, you better have the military out there if that happens, because it would be created.
Yeah.
So it's done.
Now you're the guy I look to. Any voting issues, you're the person I look to, because you actually helped write the Help America Vote Act.
Sure. We did, and we took 2 years. We wrote it. We set in motion things there that have been used in this election of the provisional votes, things that are pretty solid. And the one thing we have said, and it's applying to this election, and we said it way back when in 2004, Steny Hoyer, the number 2 Democrat in the country currently, what we all said, Ted Kennedy when he was alive and supported it, including Mitch McConnell, it's okay to have an election that is not decided on election night, and the votes will be counted, and to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. And that's what happens. And so, there is no direct path in this process. There's boards of elections. They, for the most part, it's a wonderful system in this country with Democrats and Republicans together at the polls, from the smallest county to the larger counties. And that's what happens. Is it perfect? No. Are there some irregularities? Yes. Is it enough to overturn an election? No.
No. And I said earlier, and I had a couple people email me, tell me I'm full of it, but I would argue that at this moment, this election was probably one that had the least shenanigans in the history of the country, because so many people were watching. And we're so hyper aware. I mean, it's not like the old days, the Tammany Hall, they were stuffing the ballot box before they went to go count it. This is, I would argue, probably one of the most, secure elections we've had.
Absolutely. And Homeland Security, which is under the Trump administration, has been bragging in the last few days, rightfully so, of the cybersecurity that they've utilized for this election, number one. Now, they're coming out, you're going to hear this if you haven't heard it. There's a Hammer program. I don't know if you've heard of the Hammer. And supposedly it can go in and it can change X amount of votes, to Biden. It's called Hammer. Well, first of all, we have to remember that these systems are not hooked up to the internet, okay? They would have to have the capability of going to thousands of polling places and somehow get into the systems. I mean, it's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, but ultimately, even if it were true that somehow, and I've had some people tell me, no, Rick, there's a way that you can possibly, through, one way or another, and I believe you, but let's say there were a way. This is where I keep coming back to. We need a hand-marked paper. We need a hand-marked paper ballot. And even if it is, and I've been saying for the longest time, even if it's just like the ATM at your local bank that spits out your receipt, you look at it, you stuff it in the box, and that is your legal ballot. And we can go back and we can count that. Doesn't have your name on it, doesn't have a control number. It's you look at it, go, yep, that's what it is, in the box.
Well, actually, it's interesting you say that because we did look at it. We debated about having a tracer, on each one, which you can have in a computer system now. If you've got a tag, you can have that if they want to. If the locals want to do that. We never mandated it, but it was up for discussion.
Yeah, it's one of those things I think has to absolutely happen, without question. Now, the other thing I keep getting from conservatives, because they believe that this election's stolen. I've got a bunch of people go, we got to stop the steal. They're stealing it, and I'm going, hold on. If they stole it, I think they wouldn't have lost seats in the House. I think they would have taken out McConnell, Lindsey Graham, and Susan Collins and gotten control of the Senate. If they stole it, they did a really bad job of stealing it.
Right. If this was electronic and they had something that was planned and they manipulated ballots or controlled them somehow, then the down ticket would have been different. Because what happened was, people voted against Donald Trump and then turned around in a lot of cases and voted for Republicans down ticket, including state legislatures.
Yep.
So, the Democratic side didn't have wins, in general across the United States in the state legislature. So they would have been able to manipulate that too and have a little bit better situation. So the down voting, was different in a lot of cases. And yeah, you're correct. If they were pretty bad, if they were manipulating this election, then they did pretty bad down ticket to manipulate it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy to me. But, the other thing I keep hearing is we need voter ID. And I hear this all the time. We need voter ID. You need an ID to rent a car. You need an ID to rent a hotel room. My point on this has always been, well, you know what? Those are privileges. Those are not rights. That's not the fundamental basis of our entire electoral system. And while I'm not fundamentally against the idea of IDs, I know that they're in play. They are thrown out there to stop people from voting. Is there a way that we can get to a place where, everyone gets to vote and we don't have these kind of artificial barriers that are thrown in front of us, and that we accept them as legitimate?
Well, what we did with the Fed, with Help America Vote Act, for example, we give options. You can give the last 4 of your Social Security. There were people that wanted to give the whole Social Security number, and we said no because you could imagine where that would go, right?
Identity theft.
But you give your last 4. So even the arch conservatives during that time, when we did that, Steny Hoyer and I, they agreed with that. You give the 4, or you can have a slip with a bank statement. If you want, you can have a utility statement. We gave a ton of options out there just as a guideline, but we didn't mandate voter ID. We talked about it. We talked about it for 2 years where we were going to go with it, and we didn't do it. But we gave options. Now, states can do more than what we said if they want, and that's where it's went into court battles with some states, requiring everybody to have an ID. But if you've got the options, then the system can be double-checked is the point.
Yeah.
If you think something's happened, it can be double-checked, and they can say that ballot's not accurate, and they can double check the last four of the social if they want. So there are some options, but we never mandated ID, and a lot of people wanted to do it, and we didn't do it.
Right. So now, like I said, as one of the key architects of that Help America Vote Act, and that was years ago. Is there any updating now that you would go, if I had to do it over again, I would have gone in this direction or that direction?
Yes, I think that the computer tags coming out with what you did on the vote would be fine, for people. I think that's one thing that could be looked at. I mean, there's some tweaking that probably will occur if, for example, something has happened with mail-in ballots, not fraud, but some type of glitch in the system, then they probably will go back and look at it, because that's, why the bill was designed, to be able to go back. You have an elections commission within the Help America Vote Act, which, by the way, it can't make a rule that says, Carlisle, Pennsylvania, you're going to turn your lights on at 7:30. It doesn't do that, and we avoided that. But we do have an elections commission where you can go and say, here's what I think is an irregularity, and it can be looked at, and if the Congress wants, then it can come back and can tweak different things within the system. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
No, I'm right there with you, because I got to tell you, I really liked the way I voted this time around. I really liked the idea that they sent it to me. I looked it over. I had a couple of days to, kind of mull it around. I marked it up. I stuffed it in the secret envelope, and then I put it in the transport envelope. I signed it. I did all that stuff, and I took it over and I personally dropped it off in the box at the election office. And then, they sent me the next day. I got an email saying, hey, we got it. Everything's cool. I'm done. I didn't have to stand in line for an hour or 2 hours on a Tuesday. Fortunately, on that Tuesday, it was nice and warm and it wasn't too crazy. But, sometimes it's not. I mean, there's got to be an easier way to do this. And in a time where it's much, much longer, where we have an opportunity, because this election, the numbers that I'm seeing, historic numbers of participation.
Well, sure they are. I mean, Trump got the highest amount of sitting of votes for a sitting president, in our history. Yep. And Biden, as a challenger, got the highest amount, and the highest amount of voters voted. I mean, this was of historic proportions. And again, if at the end of the day, and sure, allegations of fraud should be investigated, every single one of them. Yep. Irregularities should be investigated, every single one of them. But at the end of the day, with this historic vote, it went pretty darn well.
I agree. And any of those people who were caught doing shenanigans, I'm a big fan of draconian penalties, so that you dissuade people from wanting to engage in it in the future. It just seems to me that it's that important.
Right.
But Bob, I appreciate the time and the thoughts. As always, your expertise, your knowledge, your breadth of knowledge, so important. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you.
Our good friend Bob Ney. Look, as he said, look, and he agreed with me. And it's always nice to have people agree with me that, we're probably the most secure ever. So how do we expand it? I mean, the reality is the biggest percentage of people ever participated in this election. How do you make sure that happens every election cycle? Just my thought. Love to hear yours, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1952. That was the day that the labor movement lost Philip Murray. Philip was born in Scotland in 1886 to an Irish Catholic family. His father was a coal miner and a union leader. Philip followed his father into the mines at just the age of 10 years old. The father and son made the trip to the Pennsylvania coalfields together when Philip was just 16. They saved enough money and then sent for the rest of their family. One day, Philip got into an altercation with one of his bosses. Not only was he fired, his entire family was kicked out of their company home. From that point on, Philip was dedicated to the union cause as the only hope for working people. He quickly rose through the ranks of the United Mine Workers, becoming vice president by the time he was 33. He worked closely with United Mine Workers president John L. Lewis. During the 1930s, there became a nationwide drive to organize industrial workers. Philip was appointed to lead the Steelworkers Organizing Committee, a key sector for the industrial effort. The Steelworker Campaign met with historic success. They reached a collective bargaining agreement with U.S. Steel, the giant of the industry. Philip went on to become the first president of the United Steelworkers of America, as well as president of the Congress of Industrial Organizations. Under his leadership, industrial labor became a powerful force. But that force was checked by the passage of the Anti-Union Taft-Hartley Act in 1947. The anti-communist hysteria of the Red Scare also took its toll on the CIO, forcing Philip to expel some of the most radical unions from the organization. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I gotta tell you, I got a kick out of the virtual reality scene with the plushies and the furries. I can't believe this. Oh, Rudy Giuliani, how far thou hath fallen. The big story, obviously, over the weekend was the Rudy. Rudy had a shindig at the Four Seasons. The Four Seasons Total Landscaping Company, which is tucked neatly between a crematorium and a sex shop. You can't make this stuff up. They did their little song and dance, which I actually don't care what they had to say. And it's interesting now that some of the people that Rudy tried to pull into the laptop stuff are now saying, well, we kind of lied, kind of made it up. Oops, sorry. I didn't mean it. But this group has then taken the lot where the so-called press conference happened, and they put a bunch of plushies, furries in there, and they're doing whatever it is they do. I don't get it, don't understand it. You do what you got to do if that's what makes you happy. Do that, but I don't understand it. But it's still funny looking, and it got me thinking. Who got fired over that? If you were to book if you were supposed to book the Four Seasons, and you looked up wrong in the phone book, and you booked a landscaping company instead of a hotel. I don't know, man. It just seems weird. Now, I guess you could make the argument, and I'm sure they've tried, that they meant to go there, and I don't know why you would go to the landscaping place. But yeah, it is what it is. Scary stuff. Anyway, tomorrow, the big day tomorrow is going to be focus on the U.S. Supreme Court. This is the moment that conservatives have been waiting for. This is the moment the corporatists have been really looking for. How to kill off the ACA. Now, understand what killing off the ACA is going to mean. It's going to mean that millions of people are going to lose their health insurance, and possibly immediately, depending on what the court rules. So you're going to have a mad rush of trying to figure out how to deal with all of those people. And when they get sick, you're going to have even more uncompensated care. So expect a spike, a massive spike. And that's just common sense, a massive spike in insurance premiums to cover the uncompensated care that we haven't had to cover for a while. Going to go back to, pre-2010, which at that time they were saying uncompensated care cost every plan in the country about $1,000. So whatever you're paying in health insurance, I pay somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 to 20,000 a year. 1,000 of that is because of uncompensated care. So what happened is, by having people with insurance, you had a lower amount of uncompensated care and actually held down the healthcare cost, the inflation of healthcare. And I go back to what I've been doing the last several days, helping these folks who are on strike. It all comes back down to healthcare. And the reality is there's a bunch of issues, clearly, but healthcare is the issue. And what's even interesting to me is, some of the people I've talked to obviously were Trump supporters and all of that. You start saying, well, maybe what if we took this away? What if there was an opportunity to get an affordable plan from a public option or from another entity, one giant insurance pool? And it's weird because they want to hold on to it, even though they agree it doesn't cover much. It's really expensive, and actually they believe, and it may be true, that the company is self-insured, that they're actually making a profit off of offering their employees health insurance that is not great. And the more I get to know these folks, and the more the conversations I have, healthcare is for all of them the number one issue. Wages second. The slap in the face over adding fees to their 401k, down the list. The work rule changes are right there, but it's the healthcare. And we've got a court who I do believe they're going to chuck it, because Kavanaugh and Barrett have both said that they have both alluded to the fact that they believe Roberts made the wrong choice. So it's one of these moments where where are we going to go? What are we going to do with all these folks who then are going to need the care? I'm looking at this as a moment. And I've been talking about this for a while, because I look at my own situation. If I could get affordable health care for me and the family that didn't break the bank and that actually covered something, I wouldn't be doing the job that I'm doing. I'd be focusing full time on my passions. And I know tons of people who are like that. The reason they're staying in the jobs that they have are because they need the health care, which is why employers are holding on to it like a death grip, and why they spend so much money trying to convince us that a national health care plan is horrible. How dare they want to cover everybody, and then play the divisive games of, those people are going to get it. The illegals are going to get care, and, you're going to have to pay for it. I had this one really interesting conversation, and the person says to me that they were going to have to pay like $137 a week for their health insurance, which is a huge amount. When I started working, you didn't pay a dime for health insurance. It was part of the job. It was what you expected. But $137 a month, and you go, wow. And he goes, that's a lot of money. And I said, well, that's nothing compared to what the company throws into this as well. If you took all of that money, we're already paying for national health insurance. Because his first big question was, well, how do we pay for it? I go, we're already paying for it. We're already paying to cover everybody. We're already paying to cover, eye, dental. We're already covering all of this stuff. We're already spending the money. The resources are already there. You wouldn't have to raise any of the tax. You just have to redistribute how you're spending healthcare dollars currently. And we could cover everybody with better outcomes. Instead, we set up a system with self-rationing, because can I afford the co-pays and the deductibles and all of that stuff? And it makes our problems worse. If we were a society who went to the doctor regularly, we'd probably be a whole lot healthier. It just is. So I'm extremely concerned about what the Supreme Court is going to decide and what the country is going to look like on the other side. But this is a consequence of this election. And, well, we will see what Justice Barrett does and what Kavanaugh and Gorsuch do. Scary, scary times. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Hello, I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. A union of over 1.4 million strong and growing, AFSCME is gaining improvements in the workplace all across America. And right here in the Commonwealth, more than 95,000 AFSCME members make Pennsylvania happen. Highways, libraries, hospitals, parks, offices, prisons, classrooms, museums, courtrooms. You'll find